Welcome to the Affirming Village Podcast, where we center neurodivergent voices, affirm diverse ways of being, and empower families, educators, and advocates with knowledge that truly honors the whole learner. We're your co-hosts, Dr. Destiny Huff, a late diagnosed autistic ADHD mental health therapist and non-attorney special education advocate, and Lisa Baskin-Wright, an ADHD and dyslexic educator and IEP coach. Together, we dig into conversations about neuroaffirming practices, special education, and disability rights. Please remember, nothing shared on this podcast is medical or legal advice, and the views shared here by the host and the guest are their personal opinions. This space is for educational purposes only, to help you feel informed, empowered, and never alone in the village. Welcome back to the Affirming Village Podcast. Today we're discussing the July 9th, 2026 OSERS Partnership Briefing and what it can mean for disabled students, families, educators, and advocates.
Officials stated that OSERS will remain in place, IDEA protections will continue, and special education is not being transferred entirely to Health and Human Services. At the same time, several education programs may now operate across multiple federal agencies.
The briefing offered some reassurance, I'm sure, in their minds, but it also left important questions about coordination, accountability, training, funding, and enforcement.
So in this episode, we are breaking down what was said, what remains unclear, and what families should continue watching.
Because
monitoring, if I was going to use Kelly Rogers' favorite word, as I go off script already.
Because keeping the law in place matters, but implementation, access, and accountability matter too.
So let's get into it. I couldn't even make it through the script without mocking the fuckery.
I love it. And you guys will see my phone and maybe my dog Shadow in this as I look at the post I created. So on Instagram, Lisa and I were communicating throughout this briefing. Shout out to Raising Voices Coalition, who has Courtney Burnett, for tagging me in this and making sure that, we share it with everybody. It was important to know what's going on, what are they saying, and and Brandy Kuhn, that's why I was taking a pause, because I want to make sure I got her in there, for Raising Voices Coalition, for tagging me in this to get this out to everyone. So Lisa and I watched it. We're communicating the entire time. And I think the thing that's so disheartening, before we get into what they were discussing, is that as advocates, right, as parents of learners with disabilities, we are well into this information in this field, right? We're keeping up with what's going on because not only it impacts us professionally, but personally. And so there are a lot of parents that I'm sure logged onto this and were like, oh my gosh, the law's not changing. They're still coordinating with these other departments. The funding's not going to change. Parent training information centers aren't going to change. And they were so happy. And I even had a parent that commented and was like, oh, that alleviated some of the misinformation I've been hearing, right? But really, they answered nothing.
Nothing.
And it was just really their way, in my opinion, I've said this multiple times online, in comments, to say, we did do the thing. We held something
100%.
And invited everyone. You had the opportunity, and we're going to subsequently post that later, so you can't say you didn't know.
Right. Except they literally said nothing. I mean, within 10 seconds, maybe 15, if I'm being gracious, I messaged Destiny and was like, are you logged on to this crap? My brain short-circuited, because the very first thing that what's her face, Lindsay Burke, the deputy chief of staff for policy and programs, stated was about these oh my God, I'm blanking on the word. What are they called? The
interagency agreements.
Thank you. Interagency agreements. Brain short-circuited. The interagency agreements, and that we're well on our way to returning educations to the states. Woohoo, right? Like all this cheerleading around. We're so excited to return education to the states. And I thought, I literally heard the sound in my head, like, wah, wah, as my brain, like, short circuited. And I reached out to my safe person in Destiny. I was like, please tell me I am not, which I knew I wasn't, listening to this propaganda. Because my cousin will always say, she's very wise. She will always say, it's not just what people say, it's
Mm-hmm.
what they don't say that
Right.
tells you so much. And so for me, and we'll get into the weeds of this, Destiny was so fabulous and wise to like look at the transcript and like basically screenshot and download the transcript so that she could refer back to like all the kind of trash they were spewing. Uh, I'm gonna be real transparent. I didn't have the executive function to do that. I had my eyes closed and my head down for the majority of the call because I was literally like I just felt like my brain was short circuiting.
I was deep
Um,
breathing. So deep breathing
I
techniques.
was
I
trying to
was so
breathe.
irritated.
I haven't talked about this on this podcast, but I have on my social media platform. I just underwent a hysterectomy a few weeks ago, not even a couple of weeks ago,
Yeah.
and was very, very sick leading up to it. And I'm not doing terribly well in recovery. So I was really in quite a bit of pain during this as well. So I was already operating on low capacity. Um, but I really wanted to be present. But my overwhelming thought, because they just kept repeating themselves with the same trash,
Mm-hmm.
was there's so many things they're not saying because
Mm-hmm.
if they name the truth,
Mm-hmm.
then this whole house of cards, this smoke and mirror show
Collapses.
evaporates.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so to like kind of give the context, right? So for those that are not familiar with it, they do have a website called Return Education to the States. I'm not getting the exact title correct. But if you Google it, it'll come up. It's gonna have slides that they shared during the recording. As I've told many people, they were doing a recording, so I would make the assumption that it's going to be posted on that website as well.
Sure.
And it's just part of the Department of Education website. I learned that as well.
Yeah.
So, it like if you go to Department of Education, there's like it's like return education to the states. It's ridiculous. But I did this post that Lisa is a collaborator on, and it goes into the weeds of it. And the thing about it is that initially we were all familiar, right, with like OCR going to the Department of Justice, right? That's one of the things that we were familiar with. We were familiar with programs going to Health and Human Services, right? We were familiar with that. But this gave us Kelly Rogers did identify, which I wasn't tracking, the multiple interagency agreements that were taking place. And so I will
Right.
say, for me, starting out with that, even though I was like, oh, we're so excited to return it back to the States, which immediately made me nauseous, I was like, oh, this might actually be informational and beneficial because I did not know all these interagency agreements were going on. And
Yeah, me
so
neither.
it was noted that the Department of Labor was going to they have 3 interagency agreements with them. They have 1 interagency agreement with the Department of Interior. They have a few with the Department of Health and Human Services, which is RFK Jr. You've heard our post on that, our podcast episode on that. They have 2,
Back to deep breathing.
right. They have 2 with the Department of State. They have 3 with the Department of Treasury. They have 3 with the Department of Justice. So essentially, again, if you also go to the education website, Return It to the States, you'll also see where they have a breakdown of those and what interagency agreements they have as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, so I feel like some of the pieces they did not touch because it doesn't paint this in a you know positive light is that when Doge, Department of Government Agencies under the made up Department of Government Agency or Government Efficiency, excuse me, under Elon Musk was established, at the start of the Trump administration, and they came through essentially with a chainsaw and just started gutting all these different programs. They gutted the Department of Education. And the numbers I've heard, and Destiny and I were talking about this before we hit record, is that they got rid of like 90% of the staff. And so this Kelly Rogers kept trying to state over and over again that staff was going to remain, and all these different things, trying to say like, don't look over here. It's like a Jedi mind trick. Like, nothing has changed. Don't look over here. Go about your business, and we'll just keep dismantling everything while you think everything is fine because, quote unquote, the law still exists. But it's like your entire infrastructure has been gutted. And now you're taking that already incredibly fragile infrastructure and trying to shove it into all these other different departments where that infrastructure doesn't exist at all. And you're trying to make it sound like it's great and that we can, lean into some of the resources that exist within HHS and these other, departments. And I literally felt like I was being propagandized for 51 minutes. They ended it early, which I was actually grateful for because I really did not feel I had the bandwidth to make it the full hour.
It honestly went on 15 minutes too long because she
No,
was
I
just
agree.
repeating herself and not answering the questions. And I wanted not to cut you off. I wanted to
No, no,
clarify too,
please.
because I think I might have misstated. The interagency agreements in the beginning were by Lindsey Burke,
Yes.
who was the Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Programs for the U.S. Department of Education. And then, as Lisa was saying, Kelly Rogers, who's the Acting Assistant Secretary of the Education Department Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services,
Yes.
is the one that continued to say, we're going to monitor, 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 and all the bullshit. And it was so disheartening because there were such excellent questions. And so, to give you an example of some of the excellent questions, it was like, how's OSEP going to maintain its unique focus on IDEA rather than becoming one of the many disability or health programs within HHS? How does HHS plan to address the national shortage of special education personnel? Decades have been spent advocating to move away from medical model and have a dedicated special education office, and how this current decision is not harmful to that progress. How will you ensure implementation of special education when many states are not meeting expectations? Who will be addressing special education policy questions? And what will be the process for seeking policy? Right? Like, what recommendations do you have for parents of students with disabilities when the LEA or the SEA, so that's the local education agency, so that's your school district, or the state education agency, which is your state Department of Education, are not following IDEA, ADA, or Section 504? When will this transition start occurring? And when will states start feeling the move? All these excellent questions. And essentially, what Miss Rogers, as I refer to her in my post, continued to say essentially was that OSERS is going nowhere. They're coordinating with Health and Human Services, and that they will be meeting with each state Department of Education to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that parents need to monitor, monitor, monitor. Now, I gotta tell you, that was the part that pissed me off the most, because I was like, yeah, because as parents of disabled learners, we're really just sitting over here like, fuck it. We don't care what happens to our kids' education. We don't care what they have access to. We're not saying that at all. And you're over here like, monitor, monitor, monitor. What do you think we've been doing? What was super disheartening, and I don't attack people's children, right? I don't get into their personal that attacks their children, is that Miss Rogers has a disabled child who is
Right.
now an adult. And she
Yes.
spoke of fighting in IEP meetings for her child to get access. And so I was like, what's super disheartening is for you to sit up there in our faces as the parent of a disabled child and tell us that you genuinely think this is a good move.
Right. You literally, I don't know your special powers, but you literally just took the words that were in my brain and spoke them aloud. Because that is how she started, right? She started with like, I'm one of you. And there was something incredibly disingenuous about it. I'm going to be just frank. I thought, I feel like I'm being manipulated. Now, obviously, Lindsey Burke didn't set the stage well for me to feel like this was an authentic conversation. But she started with the story of being at IEP tables, but she also tried to spin it like, I've had staff and educators crying real tears of joy with me at my son's right. Like she tried to spin it like it's this positive kumbaya, we're all working together kind of thing. And sure, there were hiccups along the way, but I'm one of you. And I was like, lady, no, it's a no. Like, read the room, which you couldn't read the room because it was webinar style. They screened the questions ahead of time, so you couldn't go into the chat to be like, I've got a question for you. And I feel like if you had asked, not that some of the questions weren't pointed, because they were, but there were no questions about the staff cuts that have already happened. The Office of Civil Rights didn't come up at all, right? So the 1% of like complaints that went through, like in 2024, and I'm going to misquote the numbers, so correct me when I do. There was like 100 and over 110,000 OCR complaints that went through that were processed, that were reviewed. And in 2025, it was like 120 something. Like it was literally 1% of what it had been the year before because they had gutted the department. There wasn't one word about that. Like I said, it was like this, like, there is nothing to see here. Right. And so one of the thoughts I was having with my head down, trying not to cry while we were listening to this is if you didn't know better, you would be reassured that like system was still in place, law was still in place. We've just moved down the street. Like, our wonderful President Trump is increasing funding, right? Like, it was such gaslighting. It was ridiculous. And so what was so frustrating about it is like, I literally felt like I was watching Fox News where like if you had folks that weren't having to navigate these systems or were newer to navigating these systems or weren't necessarily as well versed in navigating these systems, you might, like you were saying, the person who made a comment on the post might feel some reassurance, right? Like one of the questions that was asked, and I thought this was probably the most poignant answer, and I will misquote it, so forgive me, was somebody asked like when the states will feel this impact. And she was like, there will be no impact. I was like, there's already been an impact this whole last year. I mean, Destiny, how many episodes have we discussed? I mean, we did a designated episode to like, wow, this year felt different. But you and I have been talking about it both privately, publicly on our social media pages, and on this podcast all year that we're feeling the impact. And this was prior to these changes being made. But one of the questions about those interagency agreements, when she showed up, like, oh, there's already been 14 of them and woohoo, right? I was like, well, has this been going on and you just weren't transparent about it and we're just finding out about this now? And that was part of the reason why we've been feeling this change, this shift all year.
And I just got to throw that a blurb in there because you talked about OCR. And yes. So, with the same budget they had in 2024, OCR resolved 1%, only 1% of cases.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't reach any resolution agreements on discrimination cases that involved harassment or violence, seclusion and restraint, racial harassment, or discrimination in school discipline.
It makes my head hurt worse than it already does.
Only 112 resolutions were reached with
Yeah,
a around $140 million budget. Yeah.
right. The
And
math
you're
isn't
correct.
mathing.
You're correct. She said, "Oh, they won't feel the effects." And I want you guys to know I took these questions directly from the transcript.
Right.
And that's where we get when will transition start occurring and when will states start feeling the move? Ms. Rogers said, working on those details now, we want to be very intentional in delivering how this partnership looks like at the federal level. This is the change at the federal level. States will not feel that. They may experience enhanced monitoring.
Right. It's like we're watching Aaron Brockovich. The water's not perfect, but it's actually good for you as you all start dying of cancer. Like it was just
How is a department concerned with healthcare delivery able to completely administer an educational program for any child, let alone children with disabilities, since their specialization is not in curriculum or teaching methods? Again, this is Ms. Rogers' response. Again, HHS does not administer does not administer curriculum. And OSERS will be working with them to enhance operations and not replace it. Now, one of my favorite questions, and I want to see if I put it on here, and if not, I got it locked in this one because I was like, oh, I love that. One of my favorite questions was when she was asked about the staff training.
oh yeah.
She was asked, how will HHS staff be trained? um in order to make sure that they are understanding the educational side and the educational impact and not the medical model. And her response was that experienced HHS staff will be training HHS staff. Now, I don't know. I think I'm pretty bright,
You
but
are incredibly bright.
I don't assume that I'm like the brightest in the room. And I was like, so the HHS staff that's experienced, which means they've been with HHS and under the medical model for years, is going to train the other HHS staff on how to look at the educational impacts, categories of eligibility, not medical model for special education.
Right. Make it make sense. And the other thing that wasn't mentioned at all, I don't think RFK Jr.'s name came up once, right? His whole desire to create an autism registry, his comments about Black and Brown's learners needing to be reparented, his comments about uh, stimulant medications for ADHD and people needing to go on farms, like all of his statements about basically that, you know, certain autistic humans basically can't live a productive, right? Like his just gross, ableist, disgusting, like anti-autistic rhetoric, anti-disabled rhetoric, his eugenics philosophy. The guy's a eugenicist. Like, I'm sorry, he's just atrocious. He wasn't mentioned once. So now we're moving this under his department. Is he going to now have easier access to records to create a registry? Like, does this not concern anyone? But like, there's nothing to see here.
Yeah, and it was just
We're
one
going to
of
get
those.
banned off the interwebs, by the way, for this episode.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They're definitely like hacking us. Like, it's just baffling. I think it's like we've said, and many of the advocates that we communicate with that are on the same wavelength as us and
Mhm.
advocate the same way we do, we can't get that time back. And, taking time out of our day, out of our advocacy, out of our mental space because we're not in school right now. And so we're not actually attending meetings and things so that we can keep up on what's going on. And for you to sit in our face. And again, I really want you all to go and hopefully, like someone asked me, will they have the transcript? I hope they will have the transcript up. Um, per accessibility, they have to, even though we know they tried to get rid of that and that got struck down. So they did have sign language interpreters there. They had two because it was a lot of content to sign. They did have where you could put on closed captions. They did have the transcript because we know they tried to get rid of accessibility and that wasn't granted. So they did have all that. So hopefully they'll have that transcript. Hopefully the video they had in the ASL interpreters on there, we could see them. So hopefully that'll be a part of it too if you need access to ASL. But I just like we can't get that time back. And you like got on there to essentially say like we did the thing. Again, I know that sounds so repetitive, but I genuinely feel like they were like, the advocates are going to come for us if we don't do this. And then, like you said, they ended it like 10 minutes early. I was glad because they could have ended it 30 minutes early because the questions, that's what I was saying. See, I ADHD. The questions, I hope they're on the website because those were good questions. It's just they didn't answer them. She gave the same answer for each question. And she's like, oh, I think I already answered that. No, you didn't. You gave us bullshit.
Yes. At one point, she even said, I hate to rinse and repeat, but I'm going to rinse and repeat. I was like, all you've done is rinse and repeat. I, at this point, could answer your question for you. Like, it was mind-boggling. The other thing that she said, and I'm sure you have it in the transcript, was she tried to start this off by saying that this conversation was coming about because Secretary McMahon had done all this wonderful work collaborating, right? Collaborating with disability advocates and all the things. And so much of, this work and this transition was born out of that collaboration. And I was like, okay, no.
I literally forgot she said that because,
Mhm.
and I think I a little bit blacked out when she said it because I was just like, you can't be serious. Like
Right.
the way in which this administration has treated disabled people, um, coming after Olmsted, right? Like starting with gutting the Department of Education and then leading to OCR and how they've handled complaints, their fight against Title IX, their fight against 504, um, giving back to the states where we know, and they were very proud to admit, like when the Federal Department of Education actually became a department and they thought that was a leg to stand on to point out like, see, state departments have been here beforehand. And I'm like, because they weren't doing their job, and so a federal department was created. Now I'm going to take a little sidestep and a little sidebar because
Please do.
somebody's going to listen to this and go, because I've already seen it in my comments, where, well, the states aren't doing it and it's not working, so I'm fine because my child has great medical doctors and this and that. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Is healthcare in the United States of America doing great right now?
Oh,
I'm
Jesus Lord.
like, I'm confused. And Lisa and I, who have our own health things, like, know for a fact it's not. On top of, and this is a piece I probably like, I feel like it's always in the back of my mind, and it feels like it's like in the front for everyone to see and know. But HHS handles medical, which also handles mental health. I am a mental health therapist. So, mental health therapists all over the country, we know how trash HHS can be. So, to then subsequently go, oh, and we're going to, right, add disability special education to that piece, knowing the current ableist, ignorant person who is running the show, we're like, are you serious? So in my sidebar, whoever is over here like, it hasn't been working, we need something different. You don't scrap, you adjust, you rebuild.
You
Okay?
fund.
Fund that part. But instead, no, we're going to take all these different pieces. So again, going back to the post, for
Which I
the
have.
occupancy agreements, okay? Oh, and I'm clicked on the wrong post. Oh. Give me a second because I use the same template. I do that a lot. The Department of Labor is going to have the Workforce Development Partnership Office of Career Technical and Adult Education for our Office of Elementary Secondary Education programs, which is the bulk of the K through 12 programs, post-secondary education programs, as well as our higher education programs. The Department of Interior is going to have the Indian education programs. The Department of Health and Human Services is going to have the foreign medical accreditation, child care access, family engagement and school partnership around school safety and supportive schools. Okay. The Department of State is going to have international and foreign language education programs, Section 117, enforcement of foreign gift reporting. Department of Treasury is going to have federal student assistance programs, student loan and grant programs. Department of Justice is going to have the Office for Civil Rights, Student Privacy and Protection, which is FERPA, and training and advisory services, previously known as Equity Assistance Centers, helping schools with technical assistance in that space. So we've taken all these things. Remember, these were all under the Department of Education, right? Now we've taken them and we've weeded them out to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 separate departments. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard was that OSERS, which is the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitation Services, was going to be coordinating with HHS.
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear them coordinating with the other ones with the interagency agreement? Okay.
Mm-mm.
So we've taken all these programs that all each had their own issues and problems. Okay. And now we've put them in 6 different departments that are somehow still going to address things. And so one of the things, kind of like 3 key questions I was like, I'm not clear on. How will HHS staff be trained to understand educational policy without viewing disability and special education through a medical model lens? Because HHS staff training HHS staff does not answer that question. How will HHS, an agency already struggling to meet physical and mental health care needs, be better positioned to support special education? Because as somebody who works so mental health is considered in the medical field, right? So when COVID was going on, they're like, oh, I'm a healthcare worker, I'm working, da, da, da. That does consider mental health professionals. They are already struggling, okay? How will multiple federal departments coordinate effectively when agencies often struggle to coordinate within their own offices? And the answer was OSERS will coordinate with HHS. The laws, IDEA, ADA, and the Rehabilitation Act are still the same. The states make curriculum. Monitor, monitor, monitor. Did I miss anything?
No, and she was really, it was like, how can I not answer your question, but say words that make it sound like I'm answering a question? I was like,
Right.
oh, she went to the school of Kellyanne Conway and Caroline Levitt of like how to dodge a question, but make it sound like, and make you feel like crap for asking the question. Right?
That was key.
And not answer it anything at all. That you just hear some words and move on. Um, and so, yes, at this point, never mind, there's an active lawsuit trying to dismantle Section 504. Well, we could go down that rabbit hole, but we won't necessarily. I'm glad that the law is on the books. That's great. But the purpose of the Department of Education, the purpose of these laws is to protect actual humans, because without the oversight and the accountability piece and having that tied to funding, they weren't doing the thing. The law existing in and of itself wasn't doing the thing. So we had to increase infrastructure. Has it been flawed? 1,000,000%. But districts know that the already fragile infrastructure is crumbling. And this is straight out of the Project 2025 playbook. They don't want to invest in public education, and they certainly don't want to invest in disabled learners. So, like, it's all part of this greater plan. And I'm sorry, but sitting and listening to somebody who's saying something with a smile and acting like they're just calm, cool, and collected and super excited about all of this is just not going to put my concerns at bay. If anything, it made it worse.
Yeah, like somebody said, they were like, this actually made me more stressed.
Oh, 100%.
Now I'm genuinely concerned about what the plan looks like. And one of the things that I didn't mention was that after Lindsay, let me get Miss Burke. After Miss Burke discussed the IA agreements, this is me keeping it classy. Miss Rogers, before speaking on doing questions and answers, showed us 3 charts.
Oh, yes, she did.
And on the website, again, the Returning Education to the States website, which is just the Department of Education website, by the way, found that out. That was interesting. Um, they had these charts they created that she was super excited about that talks about IDEA oversight responsibilities. And they talks about child fine, evaluation, IEPs, enforcement, dispute resolution, FAPE. And the purpose of these was for everyone to see federal, state, and district responsibilities, right? Because she expressed there was a lot of misinformation about that. A lot of the misinformation that she was seeing
Right.
be spread was regarding like who controls what and how states control a lot of things already. And, their parents were misunderstanding that. And I'm like, misinformation rampant. I mean, I've had, unfortunately, special education directors be incorrect at meetings. I've had advocates get in my comments and challenge something I'm stating that's facts that I can direct them to. So because if I don't post things that are not facts, if they're my opinion, I say it's my opinion. So she's not wrong. There's misinformation everywhere. However, to me, that felt more like you all don't understand that your local district makes these policies, your state makes these policies, and federally, we don't make those. And so, therefore, nothing's changing. And that in itself is misinformation.
Yeah.
Because while the law is the law, right? If the law just being the law was all that mattered, we wouldn't even have crime, right? The law is the law, yes. But there are policies and procedures and there are practices that people do. There's unwritten things that they do, right? And we know, even when you look at IDEA as advocates, we know that the Individuals with Disability Education Act, essentially, their laws are the minimum. This is what you have to do. You can go above that. And some states do go above that. However, the states that choose to have the minimum and don't even do that, that's when there's those districts and those schools are supposed to answer to their state, and their state is then supposed to answer to federal.
That is correct.
And when federal does not have the capacity to address those concerns, what happens? And
The state goes
ultimately,
rogue.
at the end of the day, I think when we got on that call, what we were looking to find out was, with all of this shifting, how do we maintain monitoring? How is that maintained if you now have gone from one department to 6 departments? And
Right.
then you're telling me if it's OCR, I'm going to the Department of Justice, right?
They've done a bang up job with the Epstein files, so I feel super secure.
Like, if it is a state complaint that I want to take to the next level, am I at HHS?
Right.
Or since that gets into law, legal justice, am I at Department of Justice? Like, that's the kind of shit we
Right.
wanted to know. And it essentially was like, OSERS is going nowhere. Well, you know what? The fucking Department of Education shouldn't have went anywhere either. But here we are. So now you have to sit here, and progressively she was getting less chill and relaxed as the questions were going on,
Right.
because it was like you were not prepared. You were not
Mhm.
prepared for the level of depth in these questions. And so you were just regurgitating the script, and it was just
Right.
atrocious.
I feel like there was a text that came from somebody to the gal that had the Department of Ed
Hmm. Like, wrap
symbol
this
behind
up.
her, that was like, it's time to stop.
Hmm.
She's like, oh, we're going to give everybody a gift and an early. And I was like, oh, you just got a message from somebody above you saying, we're done.
Right.
Okay. So how do we give hope to the listeners? We've depressed everybody.
So I was,
Oh.
interestingly enough, I was watching the In My Opinion podcast yesterday,
Okay.
which is with Michelle Obama and
Oh,
Craig
yeah,
Roberts,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the first lady, former first lady, and her brother.
Yeah, he's
And
awesome.
they had Wanda Sykes on there.
Oh,
And
say
yeah,
less.
love Wanda. And they were asking about the political climate and things like that because she was the first in 2009. She was the first Black female lesbian comedian to do the
White
correspondence.
House. Yeah. Mhm.
And so they were asking her about it, and she said something, and that just kind of stuck with me. And she was like, I know right now it's like, like it's a shit show, you know? And she was like, but we gonna be all right. And I think I liked the way she said that. One, because coming from the Black perspective, and Lisa and I have talked about this, a lot of the things going on, ICE and, this administration, unfortunately, these are things that Black people have always dealt with. So
Right.
for us,
100%.
it's like, oh, it's another Tuesday.
Right. You're like,
And
here we are.
right. And yet we're still here. We're still pushing on. We're still moving forward. And I'm gonna,
Right.
make sure my shirt gets in the frame.
Um,
Um,
I love Destiny's shirt with my
we're
whole
still we're
soul.
still pushing on, and we're still here. And I think the point of that is that as long as there are advocates, as long as there are, in my opinion, mothers, as long as there are parents of disabled learners, of Black and Brown learners, like, we're gonna keep going until we can't.
Right.
It shouldn't be that way, but it is. And I think a big thing I want to point to with that message of giving hope is this 504 lawsuit.
Yeah.
So for those of you that don't know, this 504 lawsuit has shifted a lot. So at
Yeah, it
first,
has quite a bit.
the states were like, the states that were signed onto it were like, we don't think 504 is necessary. Like, we don't think it should be necessary. Then the transition shifted to, well, we don't like the language that Biden enacted in regards to gender inequality and in regards to the labeling of the inclusion of supports for LGBTQIA plus youth. So it has transitioned quite a bit to where they're not attacking the fundamental core of 504 anymore. However, should it be enacted, it will impact 504. And that's the issue. That's why we're still rooting against it. However, we're down to like 7 or 6 states now.
I think we're at 7. And it started at 17, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And
But there's been enough pressure put on some of those attorneys generals to pull out.
yes, and Georgia's one of them. We put all the pressure on Mr. Carr and was like, absolutely not, sir. Run your political stuff somewhere else because we're not for it. Because
Right.
he's huge team current administration. Because he's trying to go up in the ranks, which with our thing, he did not make it, I believe, when we just had our so
Oh.
he won't be a part of it anyway. Because we were like, nah, you messed around too much for us. We didn't like you anyway, but now you really not in it. So, but just seeing that, seeing like, you know, things that some would consider a little one, like in Georgia, they were trying to change the homebound instruction laws. And advocates were like, no, you're not changing. You don't know anything about that. So why are you even messing with it? And they were like, just kidding. We listen to you guys and we're not. So even though it's hard, even though like listening to that was like, nails on a chalkboard, I think when you're in the advocacy space, you also see those wins. You also see, states getting into we are going to remove seclusion and restraint, or Louisiana, like we are going to add um cameras to all of the special education classrooms. Like you see these things that advocacy has made happen. And I think that's the message of hope I want to give to all of our listeners, is that that's what you have to look at too. You can't just focus on the negative. You can't just focus on, because I mean, honestly, that'll take you out because it's just so much. And this administration is piling it on so that they can misdirect us, right? So it's like they bombard you with this and then they go do this over here. And so we have to really be attuned into those things that are going on. And so, yeah, I absolutely, you know, think that's key, is to also pay attention to those wins, to those positive things that are happening, to those states dropping out, to those things that are getting enacted at those state levels. Because with this shift, that is going to play a role. What your state specifically is doing is really going to play a role in, this transition period.
Yeah, no, a couple of thoughts come to mind. One, um, was really kind of paying attention to local politics, right? I can't remember who it was that said the quote. I should, but I can't. That like everything is in politics is like hyper local, right? There are so many elected officials, whether it's school board or city council, or right, like that, run on small budgets and run unopposed, and right. And so that can make a huge difference. We tend to focus on like the big national offices, but really your school board matters. Look at what's happening in Texas, right? The State Board of Education with the damn Bible stuff, right? Like it matters. So, so I think, it feels tangible to be able to kind of get involved in your micro community, right? And sort of better understand like who's representing you and how to get involved at that level. Caitlin from Cruise Capabilities is really like sort of leading the way on how to do that in her town in Texas. She's super involved and it's really fun. Like I'm not in Texas, but I really love to watch her advocacy and sort of her sort of paint this roadmap of what it can look like. But the other piece that I also wanted to lift up that feels relevant and important was Ashley Barlow from the Collaborative IEP. She's an attorney out of Kentucky, but does advocacy work sort of nationwide as well. Um, Talked about as these shifts happen at the federal level and the sort of accountability piece fluctuates, relationships at the individual level, like the team level, become that much more important because we need to be in good communication. We need to be establishing real relationships with folks because we can't be relying in the same kind of way on external accountability. I think truly for a lot of folks, it's felt for a very long time that external accountability doesn't really exist anyway. Um, or it wasn't accessible. You needed to lawyer up or what, right? And that's so cost prohibitive. So you and I both have promoted positive collaborative working relationships. Like that's our whole shtick. Like that's our whole approach is get in relationship, value one another, amplify your learner's voice, help folks get curious. Like that's the way we do advocacy. But I think that that's a really important piece to lean into in these times because it doesn't mean don't pay attention to what's happening at the federal level because that's exactly what they want us to do, right? So things like calling your representatives and writing, right? Like all of those things still remain really important. But at that granular level, how do we engage the folks that are actually working with your individual learner in partnership as best you humanly can? Because I think that's important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love that you said that because that's so important. Where I'm at, our superintendent actually in our county actually just got his contract renewed, and it's a big deal because um of the way the funding is going and his salary and not being able to quote unquote pay for paraprofessionals or increase pay for paraprofessionals and educators, but his salary is steadily increasing. So that local level is so key. And my husband, who loves history, has always said that too. Like, he's like, as a United States of America, he's like, just in general, they don't train us like, or excuse me, teach us the importance of your local politics. And he's like, that's why some people are like, I could live in this city forever or this town forever, because it's benefiting them because they are invested in that. And so, yeah, I think we hit on so many things, local advocacy, keeping apprised of the federal level, knowing what's going on at the state level. You're looking at your community. Again, the carousel is at my Instagram. It's on her Instagram. And I'll probably put something like on our Affirming Village Instagram. But I'm seeing also all the errors in the one I created, so I might clean it up and then post it on there. Because I was trying to get it out fast because it had happened. I wanted to come out that day of. But
schmares. It's all good.
But yeah, definitely check that out. And again, it's the Returning Education to the States is the website, which is really just the Department of Education website, where they also have these interagency agreements and this information. You see my dog trying to come into the frame. Thank you all for listening to this essentially special episode that we did this summer because this happened. And we were like, we definitely got to get some thoughts out there. And also let us know your thoughts about the webinar in the comments.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you again for joining us here in the Affirming Village. We're your co-hosts, Dr. Destiny Huff and Lisa Baskin-Wright, and we hope today's conversation leaves you feeling seen, supported, and better equipped to advocate for yourself or your learner. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone else in the village. Until next time, keep advocating, keep affirming, and keep building the village we all deserve.